Welcome to Netaji Subhash Open University. Friends, we are discussing several topics and chapters of goods and services tax. And the chapter will be discussing today in this module is payment of taxes under GST law, as well as the books of accounts electronically that need to be maintained under the GST law for and towards fulfillment of all obligations for payment under the GST law. Interestingly, to remember that the entire process of liability determination, input tax credit availment, determination of the net liability, uploading the payment, knocking of the ledgers, credit ledgers and cash ledger, these are all done electronically under the GST law. So, no manual voucher, no manual challans and other things are applicable under the GST provisions. You be absolutely rest assured about these things that it's all on digital platform. The mode of payment under GST law is covered under section 49 of the Act. The payment of taxes, interest, penalties and other amount. Delayed payment are covered under section 50 if there are delayed payment as applicable from time to time. Tax collection at source is covered under section 51. Transfer of input tax credit is covered under section 53. And then the totality net payment that ultimately flows into the GST 3B as a final payment for that particular month concerned. There are certain rules that is made for effecting this payment mechanism under GST law. Once again to repeat, entire process, the rules is on a digital platform. Whatsoever purchases I made and the tax paid on all these purchases, these are all recorded in my GSTR 2A and these are also recorded in my electronic credit ledger. The ledger, the books of accounts is very clearly mentioned that it is a ledger which is both my electronically credit ledger readily available with me. So, this rule number 1 of the rules on payment for GST, rule 1 says electronic tax liability register. What is electronic tax liability register? My friends, it's like the GSTR 1, my total sales register for the entire month, because the return period, the tax period is monthly for the normal vendors, and only for the composition it is quarterly. Let's speak about for the normal people. So, for a particular month, the entire of the sales ledger, in which you have got a breakup of how much is SG, how much is CG and how much is IG. CG means central goods, how much SG means state goods and service tax, and IG means interstate goods and service tax. The total things, it's forming part of your ledger called as the liability ledger, because you are liable to pay these taxes. Where it is maintained? Not in any books of accounts, manual paper, no, it is on electronic. The moment you crystallize your GSTR 1, that means your liability getting crystallized under state goods and service tax, X is the liability, central goods and service tax, Y is the liability, and interstate goods and service tax, Z is the liability. That's called rule 1, electronic tax liability ledger. All the purchases that I have made during the particular period is reflected, propelled automatically in a basket in which my vendor, means where from I purchase the goods or services, they uploaded their return, and whatever tax they collected from me and deposited to the government account, that is coming directly to this basket in the SGST, CGST and IGST. I can just click on my login password in that GST online portal, I can find the by CGST, IGST credit and SGST credit. It's called electronic credit ledger, credit, input tax credit. By 10th of the next month, I finalizes my liability. 15th of the next month, I finalizes my input tax credit. So the liability minus credit equals to my net tax payable. This next tax payable, I am absolutely ready to pay and upload it on 20th of the next month. So that day or before that day, I am absolutely ready to find it out how much I need to pay. Say 100 rupees is my liability and 80 rupees is my credit. 100 minus 80, 20 becomes my tax liability which I need to pay. So I need to go to my online bank account, log into my bank account, pay that much of amount electronically, and this amount of 20 rupees directly comes to the credit of my electronic cash ledger in rule as per rule 3. And then there is a rule 4 which says identification number for each transaction. So today whenever you do also any of the banking, online banking transaction, you get an unique identification code for each and every transaction that you do online electronically. So that thing comes over here, right? Certain forms has been prescribed for payment. GST PMT1, it says electronic tax liability. The part 1 says returned related liability, that means how much is the return liability, and part 2 says other than return liabilities like interest, penalties, etc. GST or PM2, PMT2, payment 2, PMT means payment 2, electronic cash credit ledger. PMT3 is the recredit in the electronic ledger by the proper officer in case of denial of refund. GSTR PMT4 is the communication of discrepancy in the electronic credit ledger if there is a discrepancies, and PMT5 says electronic cash ledger. So my friends, be absolutely comfortable with this word. There is one electronic ledger determines your your liability. Another credit ledger, electronic ledger, right, provides you the total of your credit availability, and then the third one which says the net of cash ledger, how much cash you paid through bank, and that is coming into that particular basket. What are the types of payment? You may have, if the supply is only intrastate within West Bengal, it is CG account central government and SG account West Bengal. If it is a union territory, then UGST, and if it is an interstate, then it should be IGST, where components of CG and SGs are stated, IGST. There could be the third situation where I am making payment for TDS or TCS. There may be a fourth situation where I am making a payment to the government on account of interest, penalty, fees and other charges, as may be levied. But this all are through this electronic mechanism. Absolutely there is no mechanical mechanism for any manual payment or documentations under GST law. How to deposit this amount? Either I necessarily to have a internet banking or a debit card, credit card, or a national electronic fund transfer mechanism called as NEFT, or a real-time gross settlement called as RTGS. In any of these places, in any of these cases, or there may be a very small amount which I can pay through a OTC called as over-the-counter payment up to 10,000 rupees. But fundamentally, this entire payment mechanism is through the banking channel, either through a internet banking or a debit card, credit card process, or a NEFT process, or a RTGS process. And the challan for deposit of the money, which you need to fill it should be auto-filled also, right, is coming in the name of GST PMT. PMT means the payment 06, and which should be valid for a period of 15 days. That means once you filled in, paid the money, uploaded it, this challan will be valid for 15 days and you need to necessarily to link into to your linked bank account to say whether you should pay through the banking channel, that is the net banking or credit card or NEFT or RTGS. Okay. Once it is done, before you come to the conclusion of this payment, need to once again recall that the credit utilization is very important under the GST final payment liability determination. If you have got IGST credit with you, that IGST credit you can utilize with IGST payment, CGST payment, SGST payment. So universally you can utilize it IGST to IGST credit, IGST credit to CGST liability, IGST credit to SGST liability. Whereas CGST credit you can only utilize for payment of CGST liability and IGST liability. And obviously state government money you cannot utilize with the central government net off. So SGST credit you can only net off, liability you can only reduce through SGST liability and IGST liability. So my friends, whenever you are going to knocking off the liability, the total liability minus the credit, you should be very careful which credit you are going to utilize for neutralizing which liability, and then only the net payment will appear before you. Right? All the debit notes and credit notes, all the subsequent documents that comes out need to be properly considered, because once you finally fill up that challan called as PMT06, it's basically finalization of your entire liability process. Certain process beforehand need to be carried out to be verified. Number one, input tax credit as self asset shall be credited here. The payment towards output tax to be finalized category wise. Knocking off of the liabilities, knocking off of the credits, IG to IG, IG to CG, that has to be very carefully done. Credit ledger has to be knocked off. Differential net payment amount to be credited in the cash ledger through that PMT06, through internet banking and or debit card or NEFT or RTGS. And then finally you come to a net situation where your net amount available in the cash ledger is just equivalent with the net amount of liabilities appearing in your liability ledger. Knocking off these two shall only be eligible or make you eligible to file the return. You file the return, that means without a proper payment or full payment of tax liabilities, you cannot make good or cannot upload the returns thereof. The banking password, the linking of your internet banking, your credit flow, your mechanism to electronically upload your cash ledger and credit ledger is a part and parcel of the entire transaction, and the same thing is also applicable in case of TDS, because the amount of tax that you have deducted need to be paid and the return thereof need to be filed, uploaded at a regular interval on a monthly basis. So friend, we come to a conclusion of this session, and we need to remember very carefully that my entire return filing process, my entire payment process, my entire books of accounts maintenance process and books that need to be maintained for GST payment, that is a cash ledger, liability ledger, credit ledger, has to be updated on a monthly basis, has to be neutralized, and then only the entire responsibility for GST payment shall be fulfilled. And this is absolutely on a monthly basis is to be cleared up, otherwise on the non-payment will be exposed for penalties and interest thereof. Thank you my friends for sharing on this particular session, and requesting all of you to go through this process of that net banking, debit card, credit cards and RTGS payment mode through PMT06 challan, and then knocking off the liability ledger with cash ledger and then the credit ledger. Thank you everyone.